Cool.
It looks like it's up and going.
Okay, super. It is 6 o'clock, so I think we'll go ahead and start. We'll call to order special city council business meeting for Monday, June 29th, 2019. It is 6 p.m. Lindsay, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Lester.
David is on another call right now. Oh, he's going to answer. All right, there you go.
Councilmember Lester.
He's there.
Okay. Baker.
Here.
Reva. Here. Cool.
Here.
Livingston.
Here.
Mayor Tom Phillips.
I am here as well. So we do have quorum for council. So we'll go on. So this meeting, the City Council and Norwalk Planning and Zoning on June 29th, 2020 is being held electronically. Governor Reynolds issued a state of public health disaster effective June 10th, 2020 that removes the limits on gathering, but physical distancing limits are still in place. I issued a proclamation of emergency effective May 15th, 2020 that opened up our public buildings, but due to limits on physical distancing, it is impossible to hold this meeting of the City Council and Planning and Zoning Commission in person at City Hall. Therefore, this meeting will be conducted electronically. As with all electronic meetings, there may be some technical glitches. We may talk over each other, and there could be a bunch of other issues that occurred during our meeting tonight. I just ask that we all be patient and respectful with each other as we conduct this meeting. For those on the Zoom meeting, I'm not going to say that because it's not true. So this is a work session with City Council and our Planning and Zoning Commission. So external input will be limited for this meeting. It's a discussion between and a presentation between P&Z Council and our consultants. You'll notice that you needed to be allowed into the meeting tonight. If you are disruptive, we'll give you a warning, but if you're still disruptive after that, we're going to remove you from the meeting and not allow you back in. This is what would happen in an actual meeting if we were in person. So this isn't really a change to our procedures at all. We're no longer streaming our meetings through Facebook Live and have changed our streaming to YouTube. We believe YouTube provides the ability for a much broader audience to view our meetings since you don't need an account to view. And the ability to comment to the YouTube meeting has been turned off, so we don't have a meeting going on within a meeting. We are recording this meeting, so please act accordingly. And finally, Judy and I are only human, and we may miss recognizing somebody, especially with the changes that have been going on. If that happens, please interrupt us via the chat box. I'm sure we're not going to be, I won't be offended, and I'm sure Judy won't be offended as well at all if you do interrupt. So with that said, we will go to approval of the council agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All right, I got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, same. That motion carries. So Judy, would you like to call the planning and zoning meeting to order?
Yes, it is 6:04 p.m., June 29th, 2020. I will call the special session of the joint meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission and the City Council to order. Luke, will you call the roll, please?
Yes, I will. Judy McConnell.
Here.
Donna Grant.
Here.
John Frazier.
Here.
Zach Webster. Megan Regenator.
Here.
Elizabeth Thompson.
Here.
AJ Samuelson.
Here.
All right, thank you. So I will present the Planning and Zoning Joint Session meeting agenda and ask for your approval. Are there any edits or changes to that? And if not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion.
Motions.
Motion, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Mr. Mayor,
All right, thank you, Judy. Our next item on the agenda is a joint workshop with Norwalk Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council on the Norwalk 2040 Comprehensive Plan. So Luke, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have tonight a workshop with our consultants. Chris Jansen is with MSA, Chris Shires with Confluence. I believe Claire with MSA is also on the line. We are kind of at the beginning processes of this plan. We've had a couple meetings internally, staff and consultants, and we've had our first steering committee meeting. We've got about 15 folks from the community on that group, where we did a similar meeting to this about a month ago. So kind of our next step with this is to get you all together, talk about what the plan is, what we want to get out of it. And then I think Chris has got a little bit of a led discussion to happen here at the end of that through a strengths and weaknesses type exercise. So I'm just going to turn it over to him and quit talking.
Cool. Excellent. Welcome. Or I should say thank you for having us tonight and allowing us to do it this way. I know we had planned on doing this kind of in I want to say it's sometime early in the process. And the fortunate thing is we are still kind of early in the process as things have been delayed just a little bit due to COVID, but we are well underway. We have we'll go through a little bit of the schedule here. Luke, do I have the ability to share my screen for a power? Okay. Yep. I just wasn't sure. And hopefully this will work. And everybody let me know if you can see a PowerPoint or not.
Yes.
Got it.
Cool. And it looks good and everything?
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. So again, this is, we have two of these kind of joint meetings planned as part of this process. This first one is at the beginning where we, along with all of the other public engagement type things we're doing to start to identify priorities, goals, continued goals from the old plan, that kind of stuff, the whole thing. We wanted to meet with you folks together and basically go through the same process that we've gone through with the steering committee, the same process we went through a little bit with staff at the beginning of this, and that we've been going through in a number of different ways with the public. And we'll get to some of those things here as well. But most of you probably know each other, but I and several of you, we've met through this process already in one way or shape or another, but I would love to go around the room real quick and just at least familiarize myself and Chris Shires, who you probably know, and then Claire. But if we can go around completely, I'm absolutely fine with that. So again, Chris Jansen with MSA Professional Services. I'm a planner with MSA. I'm a team leader with MSA, and I've been with the firm for about 13 years in that capacity, doing comprehensive plans and the works. So Claire, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm Claire Michelson. I'm on Chris Jansen's team with MSA Professional Services, and I'm a planner as well, and really looking forward to working with you all on this project.
I can go next. I'm Tom Phillips. I'm mayor here in town.
Judy McConnell, Planning and Zoning Chair.
I'm Brian Baker, and I'm on the steering committee that we've met last month or so. And I'm on the Planning and Zoning Liaison, and I'm on City Council.
Anybody jump in.
I'm Stephanie Riva. I'm on City Council. Oh, sorry, John.
John Fraser, Planning and Zoning.
Stephanie Riva, City Council.
Elizabeth Thompson, Planning and Zoning.
Jackie Livingston, City Council.
Well, they're going pretty fast now. I'm Ed Cool.
AJ Samuelson, P&Z.
Donna Grant, P&Z.
David Lester, City Council.
Do we hit everybody? Left? Maybe me then. So This is Chris Shires with Confluence. Some of you have dealt with me before or seen me in previous projects. So very excited to be a part of the MSA team on this.
Yep. And anybody we miss, or we'll keep going? Nope. Okay. So review the project scope and schedule is the next thing. So many of you, like I said, are a little bit familiar with this process. You've been involved in one way, shape, or the other. And certainly you probably saw some of our proposal and that type of stuff at some point while reviewing that. But basically the general scope of this process, and we're kind of in step one right now, is that community engagement piece. That piece of it does last throughout the planning effort. As you'll see, there isn't a point in time where we are shutting off any of that type of input. So especially for the folks that you talk to or that will talk to you at some point, they may ask about what's going on with this process. And I heard about this comp plan, or, you know, some folks will be engaged throughout the entire thing and some are going to jump in at the very end and all of those types of things. But we do have that open line of communication through you folks, of course, as well as through city staff and us as consultants. The main way that we're kind of trying to steer a lot of this information is through the project website, which I'll show in a little while, but all of the public engagement pieces, all of the tools, all of the presentations, everything is on that site. So I guess what I first would say is if you ever get caught in a spot where you're like, I don't really know exactly what's going on with that this month or that type of thing, steer people towards that website and they will be able to find that latest information as well as you would. So it's a good resource to use if you do get in that step. But we're basically, community engagement is the first step. We've started getting into existing conditions, inventory and analysis, that type of thing. So we put those two things together and we get this feedback from the public that says, here's what we really love about Norwalk. Here's what we want to preserve about Norwalk as we grow. Here's where we think we want to grow, all that kind of stuff. And then we pair that with, here's where we're going to have issues with infrastructure. Here's where we're going to have issues with connections. Here's where we want to make sure that we have neighborhood connections continued, or this is where we want to divide things a little bit so that we don't have incompatible land uses that are causing us problems 20 years from now. All of that type of stuff gets put together. We put that into this kind of vision and framework for this plan, which is step 3, and create that vision for Norwalk 20 years from now, create the goals and the actual action steps that the council is going to take, Planning and Zoning Commission is going to take, city staff is going to take, as well as the community and the champions there within. Because as you guys well know, a well-run city is not just the city government. It involves Chamber of Commerce, every business, residents, the school district, all of those folks have a big hand in what Norwalk is now and what people value about it. One of the things we've gotten out of this the entire time is how important the school district is, which that was unknown, but we want to make sure that we continue to engage that as it is a major driver for the community in terms of new residents and people probably staying there and continuing to reinvest, buying that second house, not just the first one in Norwalk, or, investing in a business or something to that effect. But create that vision and those goals and the objectives that all of those folks can use to help implement this plan over the next 20 years. And then finally, step 4 is the creation of that plan, which we'll write. And we have a plan steering committee to help us kind of run through that and review it, as well as Planning and Zoning Commission, City Council, and the general public as well to do that. So basic 4-step approach, pretty simple, but right now we're in steps 1 for the most part and 2. So in March and April, we did our project initiation meeting with city staff. We have been gathering data and existing conditions. We launched the project website, which also has some surveys that have been reviewed by the Plan Steering Committee and city staff, as well as a crowdsource mapping, collaborative mapping tool that we're pushing out. And again, that address is norwalk2040plan.com. And we will continue to push that out here as we start off that major push towards getting the public involvement. Now, we've been challenged a little bit. When we first started this project, we thought, yeah, we're going to have these public meetings like we normally do as part of a comprehensive planning process, and all is going to be fantastic. And it still will be fantastic. We're just going to have to modify how we're doing that. So Luke Paris actually came up with a good idea that we're starting to run with here this month, next month, I guess, July, where we at the, tonight, obviously, end of June, joint P&Z Commission and Council workshop. And again, we're still at that beginning stage. But within the next month, we will basically be doing a kind of a 3-part series on getting people excited for what we normally would have done at one meeting on an evening, taking a 6:30 meeting, gone till, 8 or 8:30, depending on how much people talked, and done here's what comprehensive planning is, and here's where we are in the schedule and what is going to happen over the next, 12, 18 months of this process, and the scope of work that we're going to be going through, and the engagement tools. And then finally, the SWOT analysis that we've had the plan steering committee do, we'll have the public do, we're going to have you guys do later tonight. But we're going to break that into 3 parts. The first 2 pieces are going to be some videos that'll be pushed out, so people can just watch those and learn about those types of things. And then that third one will be probably in online and potentially in person if that's in the cards at the end of the month, but it seems like it may not be, and that's fine. So we're going to do some meeting like this. We've done some Zoom meetings. Chris has done some, you guys have done some now. So we can do those breakout rooms and make it work for those folks that want to join in that fashion. But we'll do the same thing, a little bit, cover what a comp plan is, why you're here tonight, what we really need to get out of you in terms of what you feel about the community and where you want it to grow, and how you can help with that. And then kind of the overall what the process is and how they can continue to be involved over the next 12, 18 months. But that'll be that part 3. So anticipate that over the July, all of that stuff rolling out. We still got to set that date for that final part, but we'll get that done. August, we'll do a second plan steering committee to go over some of the feedback that we've gotten. And we're also going to do stakeholder meetings and focus groups. Now, those in the past have been really, really important to a planning process, and they will be as well as for this one as well. But we'll do those. We've always done those. Sometimes we do a phone interview. Some people just want to respond by email. So we will modify that process a little bit and do those online as well, if that's the case, if folks don't want to meet. But again, those would probably be small enough groups. If people are comfortable meeting, we can do that too. But we're going to play it by ear, and we have the tools to do that. So at least we have the tools to do it. I would say if I had to do this 5 years ago as part of a comp plan process, it would be a lot of conference calls by phone, and they wouldn't live up to what we're able to do now. So I won't go through all of this. Again, this will be up on the website after we're done here tonight. But September, we'll promote some of the youth things that we had. As the kids are back in school, we have a youth survey that's out now on the website, but we'll push that a little bit more at that point and try and get some real school involvement there. We'd also we had some pop-up meetings as part of this, so we're going to figure out when and where it might be best to do those. We'll work with the plan steering committee and city staff on making sure we get those scheduled and find some events that are going to work where we can, keep people safe, but still meet them where they are. And that was kind of the goal through those pop-up meetings that we have scheduled in here. And then we go through, we start drafting things in November, December, January, February. We kind of have that kind of mid-review, but we'll be back to seeing this group again in April, where we'll have another. So at that point in time, we'll have finished step 1 and step 2. We'll be well into step 3 and step 4, where we're actually creating that plan. You guys have been following along. Many of you are, again, involved in some way, shape, or form on that plan steering committee. But we'll be meeting with this group again to review that kind of draft plan and make sure that, again, that it's meeting some of the goals and the objectives and expectations that you have, and that it'll meet your needs. Because a comprehensive plan is a really valuable tool that I know you all use a lot. So we want to make sure that this one is that useful document that you'll have on a regular basis and will refer to for the easy decisions and the tough ones. that when it comes to land use and growth. So after that, we have a draft comprehensive plan open house. And then we'll basically complete those edits. We'll do another survey to see what people think about the draft document. Start doing that final chapter, which is the implementation and action plan, which it'll be a matrix basically that will be kind of the other really, really useful tool. The future land use map is always the one that everybody's like, yep, when we make a rezoning decision, that's the map we look at, and that's the one we modify if we need to, and that type of thing. But that implementation and action plan will be another really useful part of this plan in the end. June, we have our final plan steering committee meeting, start wrapping things up for the most part, and then we will meet with you both individually. In July, we'll meet with Planning and Zoning Commission to do public hearing review and kind of a recommendation meeting to council. And then we would anticipate that in August, the city council would also do a public hearing for the plan and review it and adopt at that point, or at least consider adoption. Any questions on that 4-step process and the schedule at this point?
Chris, did you see the question
I did not.
in the chat?
No, I have. So on
Okay.
one window, I have, just read it to me. On one window, I have my PowerPoint, and on the other one, I have all of your wonderful faces. And so I lost the rest of it.
It was a question from Stephanie Riva. This is Stephanie.
Okay.
Just to clarify, so when you finish each of these draft chapters or sections, will they be posted on the website, or is the draft just internally kept with planning and zoning and the steering committee?
Normally, we try and put them in. My default would be, as we get them done, put them out there. Let them people look, especially the way we have it set up right now. The first piece we'll be doing is really what we call the community profile. And it's that existing information. It's all the existing stuff that is just part of, here's what's going on in Norwalk now. Here's some, projections that we have, that type of thing. And I don't think I have that. It's in that, it's in it. We do that as part of that step 3, that community profile. If you look at the top there, vision and framework, that piece we want to put out right away, because the idea is that once people start to really look at this, we want some of them on the same page. If they're willing to dig into that, because it's kind of a big appendix that we normally put into these, we want them to understand, okay, here's where we're at right now. So as we're developing goals and objectives and all of that things, the best thing we can do to help everyone find that same, at least, understanding of what's going on right now, we want to put that out there. The public engagement chapter, we usually try to put that as soon as we get a lot of the feedback. So once we close up sort of this first big, and this won't be until the fall for the most part, once we get done with all of this, but we'll put that chapter out as well, so that people can see that I was part of that, online meeting that we had, and I filled out the survey and I did my crowdsource mapping thing. I want to see where my feedback is. It may not make it, because this is all about consensus building into the end and about building those goals and the strategies. But we don't want anybody to get turned off because they didn't see kind of their feedback. At least it may not make it in. Every piece of feedback we get isn't going to be a goal necessarily. It'll be somewhere in there. But we want to have people be able to review that. So we put that out there kind of as soon as we get it done as well. And then the chapter 3 is the goals and objectives for most of the non-land use planning stuff. At least we have it set up in that sense. And then the land use chapter, again, we'll publish that out as soon as we get a draft of it. We'll put it out so the plan commission can the plan steering committee can look at it. City staff will have probably looked at it at that point. That's kind of their role in this. And then that would be available to the public as well. There isn't a lot that we're going to create as part of this process that would be, in all honesty, I can't think of anything that we're going to create that it wouldn't be publicly available.
Right. To follow up on that, I saw the sections that are going to be posted, and I might have missed if you said this, but will the public have an opportunity to comment on those drafts on the website, or do they have to go to a public meeting? Because that's been the problem, is people are saying they don't get a fair hearing because they can't go to the meeting when it's scheduled.
Sure. No. So one of the other things we've talked about. Yes. Let me rewind. No, they will be able to view the documents online and make comments. One of the successful things we've done in the past is used Google Docs to post that. And so people can't be totally anonymous. They have to at least kind of log in to provide some comments, which keeps us from getting crap for the most part. But it does allow them to review those documents. And technically somebody could look at this whole plan and view it and provide all the input that they wanted and never have to come to a meeting, to be quite honest. We designed it in that way. We've also designed it so that if somebody was not computer literate or really didn't want to interact in that fashion, they also will have the opportunity, well, they'll have the opportunity to do that. It'll be a little harder since we're doing a lot of online stuff just because of the COVID stuff, but I think there will still be some opportunities for that. But they will be able to review it and provide comment without coming to a meeting. And if they miss a meeting, we will post the public, and we'll post that PowerPoint. For the community input meeting, and the draft plan open house, we had planned on recording those, the presentations from those meetings, and posting them along with questions that people could fill out afterwards, because we do have a lot of people that maybe can't make that 6:30 on a Tuesday night meeting, but they still want to, go to that presentation and provide the same feedback that someone would have at the open house. We usually have a worksheet that says, hey, how did you learn about this process? What did you think about it? What are your comments? Blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. We just put that same thing in a fillable form on the project website with the YouTube video of us doing the presentation. They can watch it and fill it out just like they'd gone to the meeting. So.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry to get you off track.
Oh, no, there is no track. You guys are the audience, and whatever track you want to go on is the one I'm taking. I just sort of had a little outline in case I get lost. Roles of the Planning and Zoning Commission and the City Council. So yes, you guys already know your roles in the development process, and definitely in running the city as the elected officials. But in terms of the comp plan, we have the consultants. So that's Chris, myself, Claire, Sean O'Shea, Jane with Chris as well, and then anyone else we need to pull in. But we all have a lot of people at our disposal if some issues come up along the way where we need a landscape architect, where we need a engineer, where we need another plan or something to that effect. So, but the main team is Chris, myself, Claire, Sean, and Jane. We manage the process and develop the plan document. So we're not expecting anybody else to write this thing. That's us. The project team is, working with, which is Luke, and I can't remember exactly who else is on that, but it's mostly staff, Elliot, and public works director, name's slipping my mind right at the moment. Sorry. Somebody help me out.
Wayne.
Emails. So anyway, emails, calls, and meetings as needed. And obviously assist us with providing resources, all of that kind of stuff, especially for that community profile, which is that first piece that's kind of what's going on right now and how we're going to document that. And then just assist with the process and review, make sure that we're on the right track, and that we're doing what needs to be done to get this document where it needs to be, and that it's the useful guide that everybody needs in Norwalk that it can be. Plan Steering Committee, again, kind of an extension, a larger body of that. A lot of you here on this call are involved in that process, on that committee, but primary review and guidance. There's 8 meetings of that committee throughout this process. We've had one of those. We'll continue to have those kind of on a regular basis, to continue to review and guide that document. And then finally, Plan and Zoning Commission, milestone input and review. Obviously, we would love to have everybody on these calls involved in as many of those kind of events, meetings that you can be. Promote those if you would. We want you to have all of the great input and all of the great tools put into this plan that's going to make it that document that you want. But we'll need help promoting it and getting feedback on it. But in the end, Planning and Zoning Commission will review it and give us edits along the way, and provide a recommendation for adoption is our expectation from Plan and Zoning Commission. City Council, same thing, milestone input and review, 3 meetings, and then adoption by resolution at the end with their own changes. So those are the roles and responsibility. Any questions on those? Excellent. So project objectives. These are mainly from the kind of the RFP and what we put together so far in starting this process, but we want to develop a consistent guide for future growth. That's one of the major goals of this plan. We need to have goals and policies that are supported by the feedback we get from people, by your input in the process, and from the data that's out there, just those existing conditions that are there. And we want to meld that with best practices and find that successful kind of medium where we say, here's the goals and here's the policies on how we're going to reach those goals for the next 20 years as Norwalk grows, and this is how we're going to do it. We want to identify development regulations that need to be revised or updated that are consistent with whatever we come up with, consistent with what you currently have, and if we're recommending new things, that there's revisions that are ready for you guys to then tackle after this to make the plan to make it work. Because if we suggest things that aren't possible with your current regulations, that isn't going to do much good. So we will identify those things that may need to be revised as well in the future. Ensure that the comprehensive plan aligns with the City Council's 2028 strategic vision. That was in the RFP, and one thing we want to make sure we're in line with that. And then coordinate and support public participation through a variety of engagement activities. And again, if you look through that schedule and what we've kind of kicked off at this point already, we do have a variety of online engagement at this point, but we do have support for both that traditional and the kind of digital engagement, and we'll continue to press forward with that as we're allowed. And we've done this with the other folks, and we have a really nice long list. Some of you have jumped in on this as part of the Plan Steering Committee, but I would love to know at this point, what are some of the council and the Planning Commission's objectives that we need to make sure that we have in this plan? Things that you expect out of this process, very similar to, these ones that were written down as part of the RFP. What else comes to mind when you think of, I really need the plan to do this?
I would hope that the plan would include a way to maximize our economic development potential in certain areas, and that our execution would involve being able to plan our streets and access ways to contribute to that. So that as we're looking at it, we might pick a certain area and say, well, this would work, if this came in here or that came in there, or whatever it might be, right?
Okay.
But to have that somewhere in this plan, and might be a way to make better use of our resources, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. What else?
This may be out of scope, but I'd like some ideas as far as how sub-area 3, I think it's sub-area 3 would look. I'd also like pretty well defined transportation plan as far as where our feeders are and arterials and all those other things, where they need to go.
Mayor, you're talking the realigned S-curve at sub-area 3, correct?
Yes, and what goes around it.
Yep, that's 3. I just want to make sure we were on the same page.
Yeah, at least my understanding, and somebody correct me if we're wrong here, but is that we won't have sub areas in the new plan. It'll just be a plan that, we may have, growth, annexation, milestone type things and some steps sort of thing, but we're not going to have these, the areas that have to be defined at a later date. We're just going to address it as a future land use plan, kind of as a whole thing, and it may have a stepped approach, but it won't look quite the same in that sense. I saw Luke shaking his head.
That's my
Okay.
main goal from
Okay,
land
good.
use plan side of it, so I sure hope we get
That's
there.
what I heard at the beginning of this, and I was like, okay, good, because I worked on one of these sub areas with you folks probably 3-4 years ago, Luke, I think, and it was inconclusive at that time. We just didn't nothing came out of it that said this is what we're really going to plan. And you know, the great thing about a future land use plan is even if we draw the wrong color on the map now in 2020 or 2021, you can put different colors on the map in 2025 if the situation changes and the conditions change. That's why we put in these goals and objectives as part of the planning process, so that when the colors on a map don't align 10 years from now, 5 years from now with whatever we put on them, you have some really good goals and objectives to then make a decision as Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council and say, you know what? We had these 3 goals that we were going to, do this. We were going to chase these types of economic development activities, opportunities. We were going to have this in terms of a transportation route that was going to go through here. And yeah, these land uses don't quite align with what we had planned 10 years ago, but these other things still stand. So let's go ahead and change the color on that map and feel fine about it. That's another goal of this plan, is to not just have that mapped, but to have some of those goals and policies for you guys to lean back on, that are supported by the public input that we're going to get through this process, to say, it's okay, we can change that color 10 years from now, because who can predict 10 years from now real well? We can do a pretty good job, but things change. So what else?
I look
Sorry.
forward to seeing how you're going to be able to focus that without the use of sub areas.
What we're still gonna. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
I said I can learn, so I'll watch and see.
Okay. We'll do our best, and I like I said, I imagine that we will still be addressing them in a way that works with what you guys want to bring forward, but they will have more of a plan to them than they do now in terms of what those are going to be in 10 years, 20 years, that kind of thing, I guess is the goal, that the way I would explain it.
All right, this is Stephanie, and I apologize for not having my video on, but whenever I have it on, it cuts everybody off. So I know that Norwalk has an open space plan, a parks plan. We also have a greenways plan. I would like to know in the comp plan, I would like you to take into consideration that plan to show how we're going to keep the community connected as it grows, whether that's through trails, on street, off street, just how are we going to keep everybody connected? So that's an objective that's near and dear to my heart.
Okay. Thank you. Yep. What else? I can address that one a little bit, as well as some of the other plans that you guys have out there. We won't be excluding or redoing all of those. The great pieces from those plans, especially the ones that are most current. And again, this is why we have that plan steering committee and city staff as a part of this process, is to take the best pieces of those plans and move forward on those, especially since the Parks and Greenway one was done very recently, so there's no reason for us not to use that as we then build into kind of this future land use and transportation plan, and infrastructure. What we really got out of a lot of this as we've started going through this process is there are some transportation and infrastructure challenges that are going to be some of the bigger parts of looking at land use, and either, yep, we want to go this route with land use, what are we going to need to do that, or what are we limited by, and kind of that balance between there. So we'll be using all of the existing plans that we can get our hands on as part of this process, and then building on those, not starting with no background information or cleaning anything out for the most part. Okay. Well, if anything comes up as we continue to go on through here, or if you do have any other thoughts on this as you think about it, please by all means email Luke, email me, and let us know, and we'll put those into the list, because we do have a nice long list from this slide, and we'll continue to kind of build on that. Again, we want to make sure that this is a plan that you guys use on a regular basis and that meets your needs. And part of that process is making sure as the consultants that at the beginning of it, we understand your expectations and we're working towards those. Because I don't want to get to the end of this and have you guys reviewing something at your last meeting that doesn't meet your expectations or wasn't what you wanted out of it. So this is along with checking in on a regular basis. This is part of that building of that relationship of this is what we want out of this. This is what we need, and get to it. So recent upcoming planning activities, again, please take a look at the website, surveys, and the collaborative mapping tool. And then we will be basically, needs to move up. That moves up a line, that joint P&Z, sorry. Community input workshop, we'll be doing that 3-part system to do that in July. And then in August, we'll have another plan steering committee meeting and then stakeholder meetings and focus groups as well. And we'll be reaching out to you folks as well as the plan steering committee members and city staff to get a list of the either individuals or groups that we need to start scheduling those meetings with. Again, those are some of, especially given how far out we are from any census data, that is some of the best data I can get from real estate professionals and brokers who are working in your community and know what demands there are on growth. There's no better way for us to get that data than to sit down on the phone or on a video chat or in a room and talk to them and really get an idea of what they're experiencing and what needs they may have or what opportunities they might see that we can take advantage of as a community. So we'll be reaching out for those folks. Anybody have any questions on? Has anybody been a part of like a focus group as part of the comp planning process or steering committee or a stakeholder meeting? Yeah, thanks, Chris.
I have Stephanie Riva.
Okay, I would say we take 15 to 20 minutes if it's an individual. Sometimes we'll do 30 minutes or an hour if it's a bigger focus group. But we had planned to do a few days of that as part of this process, sitting down with folks and just listening. We'll have some leading questions so that'll go out to everybody, and then we will sit back and listen and get their thoughts. So finally, SWOT activity. Any questions before we dive into this? Excellent. So a SWOT analysis, and we'll do this throughout this beginning process. This helps us identify those opportunities, the goals that we might be developing, the threats that we need to account for as part of the comprehensive planning process, and the strengths and weaknesses of the community. So we split it into 3 categories: beautification, development, and mobility. And the overall questions that we attempt to answer through this process, and again, we did this with the Plan Steering Committee, we will do a version of this with the public, and it's built into the survey and the crowdsource mapping tool. So all of those different ways to engage folks kind of try to hone in on this. What are our opportunities? Which areas of Norwalk do you see growing in 20 years, and what are the challenges? Which areas provide an opportunity for redevelopment? What do you envision the community character will be? What would be great about Norwalk in 20 years? What obstacles does it need to overcome? In 20 years, what will attract families? And what needs to be protected as Norwalk grows? We're trying to answer all of those questions as we go through this process. So Claire, are you ready to record as we write down stuff as we kind of go through this? This is going to be, well, we'll just start, see what happens.
Yep.
You're
I have
good?
my notes up, so we're good.
Awesome. Me too, but I want to make sure that I get them right. Okay, so all of you out there, we're going to take a few minutes for some basically issues, threats, and weaknesses and opportunity strengths specifically on beautification. Now, you might ask me, what do you mean by beautification? And I would say that is whatever you think beautification is. We try to keep these a little bit vague so that somebody might throw beautification as, you know, bike trails, that type of thing, but somebody else might throw that into mobility. Absolutely fine. I just want to know, in terms of when you think of beautifying Norwalk, continuing to see the level of development increase, and what are some threats and weaknesses that you see that are going to be a challenge as the city continues to beautify itself?
I can start with that. Oh,
Okay.
Ed, you want to go?
Okay. I think a challenge in this regard, one of the points that I think most of the residents like about our community is it looks and feels like a small town, like a kind of a rural community.
Mm-hmm.
And possibly through some of the beautification efforts, the things that we do, whether that's the use of green spaces or the types of things, plantings, and that sort of thing that we have around public buildings and streets, that we do our best to try to maintain that kind of a feel to it somehow.
Okay. To maintain a little bit of the small town rural look and character. Okay.
That's right. Well, we still present a nice image to the community and the rest of the world. So that's both a weakness and a strength, I guess, depending on how you approach it.
There are going to be a lot of those that tend to be that, like, we want to make sure that we don't lose this, and so it's kind of one of those, this might be a threat if we were to do, if we continue to, you know, increase the character so that it changes us, then it could be a threat or a weakness, but there's also an opportunity and a strength to continue to build on what we've done. Absolutely. Yep. That's a great one. What else?
This is Stephanie. Weaknesses, one is the appearance of Highway 28 when somebody drives in. Our economic development director would be happy to know. I think we need better signage. But just the overall appearance is negative. Another weakness for beautification is that we don't have any control over Highway 28. You know, the DOT controls that. So there might be things that we want to do on the medians or on either side that we're not able to do.
Yep.
Some of the strengths is that we have some beautiful rolling hills. We do have some really nice parks. We have some great golf courses. And depending on if our new subdivision ordinance passes, we will have some preservation of mature trees and vegetation so that it's a more, not cozy, more welcoming vibe than something that's just a, you know, suburb built in the middle of a cornfield.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Excellent. Okay, what else? Beautification.
I had added overhead power lines to the weakness.
Okay.
It's one that always gets me. And then unattractive strip retail can be an issue. I don't think we're there yet, but as we continue to grow and get more strip retail, I don't know if this is not necessarily but avoiding that, whatever we can do to get rid of that.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you. What else?
And tagging on to that strip retail, there are some areas, those retail along Highway 28 that could be improved. I don't know how we can incentivize, other than the program we already have, those owners to beautify their properties. But that's just recommendations on how we can maybe work with that would be great.
Okay. Some of the ones that have been developed for a while, some of the older properties, or new and old?
Some of the older properties.
The properties that have been truly run down.
Sure.
Right.
Okay. Excellent.
I would have to say a challenge for us, I think, is as we come in, the first thing we see is the Lakewood utility building. The lake is very nice, and the pastoral area over to the lake was very nice. But the first thing we see is the maintenance buildings and stuff. And that's a tough entrance to Norwalk.
Okay.
Not only is it a tough entrance, but I've heard from others it's very confusing. So
Oh, yes.
we had the Lakewood
agreed.
Neighborhood Association that needs to get its message out. It needs to, serve its members of its neighborhood.
Yes.
But it's confusing to people. Are they in Lakewood or are they in Norwalk? And what is that all about? So
It's funny. We went to a birthday party last weekend, and I can't remember the park. It's on kind of the west side of town. That has the outdoor like activities, like the sports stuff.
Warrior Run?
Yeah.
Warrior Park? Warrior
Fantastic park. Fantastic park.
Great.
We went there, but my wife is from Minneapolis, and on the way in, I grew up in Windsor Heights and Des Moines, so I've had friends that grew up in Lakewood before it was Norwalk, kind of thing, and so I know that history, at least from the metro perspective. And she had asked, because she was like, yeah, they have boats on the lake. She was like, you know, boats out there? I was like, yeah, it's smaller. I think, is it no wake?
Yeah.
Yeah, I figured as much. But she was like, is that part of Norwalk? And I said, yes, it is part of Norwalk now. I think it was its own rural community and did its own thing for a while. And so yeah, you're right. That is a little bit confusing because you're not sure whether you're in Norwalk quite yet. And I think there's a lot of potential down around that area for the community to continue. So excellent. What else? Okay, we can move on. If there's any that come back, let me know. But let's move on to development. As I said before, some of these are going to cross across categories, and that's perfectly fine. We do this because we used to do this by section of the comp plan. So I had like a housing, and I had a transportation, and I had a parks and land use, and it took forever. People got bored by the end. They basically just said everything, so we've tried to split it into just 3 categories. But when I say development, the future of development in Norwalk, what types of issues and threats come to mind that haven't already been talked about?
Chris, just to jump in too before we get into that, I know a lot of times I always think of something after one of these things, and I'm like, I should have said that. Like, go ahead and email Chris and I, and we want to know that stuff. So you'll think of something later tonight where you'll be like, that's a good point to make, or something I want to have addressed.
Yep.
So certainly this isn't the only time to provide us that feedback, but kind of good to have these group discussions as well. So
yeah,
I'd say a real strength right now in development is having the geography of being able to bring that trunk line up for sewer from the North River.
Yeah.
Yep. Excellent. What else?
An opportunity is the amount of commercial land that is already part of a planned unit development, as well as residential developments that are going on. A weakness is that we don't have any really large parcels, specifically a certified site that could accommodate a user that comes in, through the Iowa Economic Development Authority or whatever. So, right now, if somebody called us, we have land. I mean, there's land available in Norwalk, but there's no place to put that user. And I think that we will miss out on quite a few really good companies and good paying jobs by not having those large parcels available.
Okay.
So I think its strength is our location, being just, Des Moines is our largest suburb. West Des Moines is our second largest suburb to the north. But I would also consider that a threat in that I don't know that we want to see explosive growth happen. We need to somehow control that growth when it comes in.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Excellent.
A possible weakness could be accessibility to water. We're going to need a new water tower at some point. we've been talking about that. Where to locate it, what's the best size for it. A strength could be if Highway 5 and US 65 is designated as an interstate. That would open us up for a lot of businesses that would locate on an interstate that would not locate on a state highway.
Right.
That's so funny because when you drive it, obviously that would be more somebody, when you drive it, it feels exactly like an interstate because it was built that it could have that designation, probably with not much more than changing signs. But it's kind of like you said with the certified sites, there are folks that are not familiar with the area that are going to call or look on a map and look for those types of opportunities. And, that's part of their due diligence. If they can't check that box because they know there's other, then they don't get to check it. So kind of making sure that Norwalk can check some of those boxes. It's good stuff to have. Yep. Thank you. What else? All righty. Well, we are doing really good on time because Luke said, is an hour going to be enough? And I was like, yeah, we'll be fine. We can do an hour. Mobility. And again, we've stepped into a few of these, so know that they will be recorded. So it's funny when we end up putting this all together at the end of it, in that chapter 2, which again is that chapter that at the end of this process, anybody who provided public feedback, you guys' feedback, all of that stuff, that will be in chapter 2, and they can look and say, wow, somebody mentioned that we need to have larger parcels for industrial development set aside and made available and promoted. That came up 10 times throughout the public meeting, our plan steering committee meeting, the surveys that we put out, and somebody has a bunch of dots in this crowdsource map that say the same thing. So it's cool at the end of this process to see those issues that start to float to the top. And some of them that, we end up going into the goals and the objectives and that kind of thing are maybe they only got mentioned once, but it was a big enough one that wow, that is something really big that needs to be there. And then there's some that are just naturally that got mentioned 10 times as we went through this process. So it's important to Norwalk, and we're going to go ahead and put it in there. But people will see that issue with, a number 10 next to it, so that when it comes up 5 years from now, you guys can look back and see that, yep, that was still a big issue, and we're going to go ahead and move forward with this. So that's kind of how this all ends up being put into the plan. What about mobility? Well, in our last few minutes here.
I have a question for you on this category.
Sure.
Our Public Works Director has a comprehensive plan that he's developed on priorities for existing street maintenance and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Will that be incorporated into this, just like bike trails and that sort of thing?
I would say yes, it will, to the effect of where it impacts new development. And obviously that's catchy because you only have so many resources as a community, right? So you need to maintain existing streets. They need to be, I'm guessing that's what type, but when you say prioritization of existing streets, that's which ones do we need to redo? Which ones can we resurface? Which ones need bigger utilities that, we're going to have to redo when that new water line has to go in and that kind of, so is that, is that right?
Yep. And we've got all those kind of plans that may impact obviously on your plan.
Right. They will impact. I would say especially some of those infrastructure ones are going to be real important for us to look at and say, Public Works knows they're going to have to up this water line at some point in time, and they're going to have to dig up this whole street to do it. It's going to have to continue down around this way. Same with the sewer and those extensions. Yeah, obviously those are going to be in there, but it also is important to know that if some of the existing streets are going to be made, changed in a way that they would potentially facilitate a different type of traffic than they currently are, or if they need to facilitate a different type of traffic than they're able to now, that those are going to be important for us to put into this plan as we look at how to project land use and what types of land use will be around there, and redevelopment for that matter.
I would think that would be one of the key discussion points, really, because what we arrive at here obviously could have bearing on the existing plan as well. So there might be a need to massage some of those plans that we have on record now, depending on how we come out here.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
anyway, I was just curious if that mobility would include something like that or how.
Yep. That would.
But
I would assume,
going back to what the mayor was saying earlier, that, you know, I think we need to look at our primary and our secondary roads and how, you know, how we have those designated, particularly in our mind, you know.
Okay. Yep.
Obviously, that's going to change with the future.
See, that one just got 2 tick marks now. Good job.
I'll get off the phone.
well, that's exactly what I was going to bring up. A weakness we have is the fact that our major entrance into town is like one choke point. And what my biggest fear is that we become an Indianola where it can literally take a half an hour to go 1 mile.
Yep.
1 mile down 65, 69 can literally take 25 minutes.
Yeah. Once you get over that hill, it just slows down. Yep.
And I mean, it's just a stoplight every single block. And if you hit all those wrong, too bad. But, you know, I think it's important to, I assume mobility is traffic flow.
It's an open category, but it absolutely includes traffic. Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, I'm concerned about, this is Stephanie, the primary and secondary roads. Also, I'm concerned about public transportation. It's not realistic to expect Norwalk to join DART anytime soon. It's too expensive. There are HERDA options that connects us to other areas in the metro, but I am concerned about connections within Norwalk, making sure that people have access to the downtown businesses and to other neighborhoods. So I'm looking at streets between neighborhoods versus dead ends. I'm looking at, you know, how do you transport people where they need to be? And specifically, if we are doing more affordable housing, you know, not all those people have cars, they don't have transportation. How are we going to get those people where they need to be?
Okay.
So that's a challenge. The other challenge will be that Norwalk is bisected by Highway 28. How do we join the east side and the west side? I mean, how do you get people over the highway safely? You know, walking bridge is very expensive, but just looking at how do you do that? How do you get children to school safely, especially the new elementary school or whatever is middle school, the one Orchard Hills down on G14. If there's another school that comes out, we need to look at that. We need to look at how our developments, and we are doing part of this, how are the developments impacting the traffic, say on G14 and Sunset? You know, we have a lot of traffic there. How do we move people through there smoothly? Beardsley is going to be another issue. When sub-area 1, south of Colonial Parkway, when that develops, how do we get people back and forth? Is it through Chatham Avenue? How do we connect all those people? So I'm giving you all weaknesses. I'm not giving you any strengths. Highway 28 going through the middle of our town is both an opportunity and a weakness, I think. Opportunity because it brings a lot of traffic in, especially if there's a detour going on I-35. But it's also a weakness because we as Norwalk cannot control that as far as signalization, how it looks, how many entrances are, or how the egress works from that, ingress and egress works from that highway.
Right. Right. Absolutely. No, those are all fantastic. I mean, weaknesses, they're not fantastic, but they're all good points to look at. And I would absolutely 100% agree that Highway 28 is a blessing and has some challenges, you know? Good. Very good. What else? I think if the mayor's talking to us, he's muted. Sorry.
Sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
It's probably good that I was muted. So we have some good industrial growth happening down on the south side of the city, and we're looking at hopefully more.
Mhm.
So how do we reserve space down there for more growth? And then we need to think about how do we get trucks safely in and out of there and not overburden Highway 28, but and maybe try to get them to the west, straight west instead of going 28.
Mhm.
The other one, as far as mobility goes, as it's already been said that we have a tight knit community. We have that small town feel. It would be, as far as mobility goes, how do we get our population from one neighborhood to another one safely? And that's use of trails and that kind of stuff. But I think that's a weakness that we have. How can we turn that? What can we do to strengthen that and make it into a strength?
Mm-hmm. Well, to continue that character, like you said, it's tight knit. People, can be within the community, move about within the community as you continue to grow. How do you continue that? How do you continue to support that kind of small town character? Right. And I am always torn as a planner on saying small town, because sometimes, there in some instances where that is not always embraced as this is how we feel, so I'm if I don't use that exact terminology, don't be offended. But I understand that tight knit, close community, that type of thing. And I will say small town if you want me to. But I always, but you know what I mean? I don't think of Norwalk as a small town. I think of it as a close-knit, growing community that has a good idea of its character and its history. And so we do, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Because there are toxic small towns.
Right.
And rather than, maybe we don't want to say small town, maybe we want to say a welcoming community.
Yeah, we'll come up with something, and if it ends up, yeah, it's I always I have to. Your guys' small town is fantastic. But I always try to stay away from that, because man, I got in one meeting one time where I was like, well, you guys are a small town, and it was an immediate, like, cans, tomatoes, all kinds of stuff being thrown at me. So I've been a little shy ever since. But thank you. If there are any last ones of these, by all means send them. If you I'm getting some chats. Mobility, David Lester says, we have a lot of areas that are not walkable. I hope we can keep growing the walkability of Norwalk. Okay, got it. Thank you, David. Walkability, connections, bike trails, all of those came up, which is all fantastic ways to move people within the community. Good stuff. So we're a little over time. I very much appreciate your time tonight. I encourage you, please email Luke and myself and Chris and let us know if there are any additional thoughts that come out of this after you're reviewing these. I would also say that if you take the survey that's out, there's an opportunity to throw more of the same thing in the same fashion. We have it divided up in that survey by beautification, development, and mobility, and kind of you can stream your thoughts into that as well if you prefer. But I do not have anything else on my agenda. I am certainly happy to answer any questions or continue the conversation, whatever you folks would like to do. Good. Okay. Awesome. Hey, Luke, I'm done.
Thank you for all that. And just to reiterate what Chris said, we fully expect folks to have some thoughts after all this, as you get some chance to think about what we've talked about tonight and just think about the community, or as you're driving around, something piques your interest. So certainly send that stuff to us. If you get out and take our survey later on, fill that out and add those things too. As he mentioned at the beginning, this engagement stuff is always ongoing. So just keep us in the loop on those things, and we'll make sure we're addressing them as we can.
I will say that crowdsource map has the ability to, if you take it with a mobile phone and you go to that, just go to the website, hit crowdsource, you can hit your location, take a picture, and drop it right into the map. So if there is something as you're out driving around or taking a walk that you want to make sure gets input into the plan, into that kind of live map that we're building, you can use it from a desktop and drop points all over the place if you want, but you can also do it from a phone. So that's another opportunity if you want to take a picture and get it into the GIS map that we're building. You can do that through the website as well. Good.
Awesome. Anything else, Luke?
Nope. I think we're good to wrap up if you guys are.
All right. Sounds good. Judy, I'll go ahead and let you adjourn your meeting first.
I will entertain a motion from planning and zoning to adjourn this meeting.
Fraser motions.
I'll entertain a second.
Reginator seconds.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 All
We
right.
were adjourned from P&Z at 7:11 p.m.
Great.
Livingston motions adjournment for city council.
Reva, second.
All right. Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 All right. David has a thumbs up. We are adjourned at 7:11 p.m. And thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a great evening.
All right.
Thank you,
Bye.
guys.